Judith Beheading Holofernes. Most people who see this painting assume it was made by a man. The violence is too comfortable, too precise. The woman in the frame isn't flinching. She isn't looking away. She is working. Artemisia Gentileschi painted this in 1614. She was 21 years old. A year earlier, she had been raped by her painting tutor, Agostino Tassi. He was tried. During the trial, Gentileschi was tortured with thumbscrews to verify she was telling the truth. Tassi was convicted. He served 8 months. In the painting, Judith grips Holofernes by the hair with her left hand and drives a sword through his neck with her right. The blood is not symbolic. It arcs, pools. The sheets are soaked. Holofernes' face is contorted, mouth open, eyes wide, mid-scream. Judith's face is focused. Her assistant holds his body down. Neither woman looks disturbed by what they are doing. The biblical story is that Judith seduced an Assyrian general, waited until he was drunk, then beheaded him to save her people. Gentileschi keeps the story but changes the emotional register entirely. Earlier versions of this scene, painted by men, show Judith looking away, looking squeamish, looking reluctant. Caravaggio's version from 1599 has her holding the sword at arm's length, her face twisted in disgust. Gentileschi's Judith is not disgusted. She is not reluctant. She has done this before in her mind, many times, and now she is simply finishing it. The man whose face she painted onto Holofernes is widely believed to be Agostino Tassi. The Death of Marat. Jacques-Louis David painted this in 1793. Weeks after the murder actually happened. He had visited Marat the day before he died. He knew exactly what the bathroom looked like. Jean-Paul Marat was one of the most radical voices of the French Revolution. He had a severe skin condition, possibly dermatitis herpetiformis, covered his body in painful lesions. The only relief, cold water. He spent hours each day in a medicated bath, working, writing, signing death warrants. On July the 13th, 1793, a woman named Charlotte Corday came to his door claiming to have a list of counter-revolutionary traitors in Normandy. He let her in. She sat beside the bath. She stabbed him once through the chest with a kitchen knife. He died within minutes, still in the water. David painted the scene with the precision of someone who had been there. The wooden crate beside the bath that Marat used as a desk, the quill still in his hand, the letter from Corday on the other. His head fallen to the side, arm draped over the edge of the tub, body still in the water. What David chose to leave out is what makes the painting disturbing. The skin condition is gone. The lesions are gone. The medicated bath is gone. The man in the painting is smooth, pale, and perfect. He looks like a saint, like a martyred Christ figure lowered from the cross. David was Marat's friend. He was also the revolution's official painter. The Death of Marat is not a documentary. It is a piece of propaganda so effective that it defined how an entire generation remembered a man who spent his days signing death warrants from a bathtub. Corday was guillotined 4 days after the murder. She said she had killed one man to save 100,000. Whether she was right depends entirely on how you count Marat's victims. The Ambassadors. Hans Holbein painted this in 1533. 2 men stand on either side of a set of shelves loaded with objects: a globe, a lute, mathematical instruments, books, a sundial. They are wealthy. They are educated. They want you to know both things. Jean de Dinteville is on the left. He was 29, the French ambassador to England. Georges de Selve is on the right. He was 25, a bishop. Both men are rendered with photographic precision. The fur on their coats, the texture of the curtain behind them, the grain of the wooden floor. And then there is the object at the bottom of the painting. Stretched across the lower third of the frame is a shape, elongated, distorted, gray-white, cutting diagonally across the floor. At normal viewing distance, it looks like an abstract smear, a mistake, something that doesn't belong. It is a skull, painted using anamorphic projection, a technique that distorts an image so it can only be read correctly from one specific angle. If you stand to the far right of the painting and look back across it, the smear resolves into a human skull, rendered with the same precision as everything else in the frame. Holbein hid a memento mori inside a portrait of power and wealth. Everything on those shelves, the globe, the instruments, the lute with the broken string, is a symbol of human achievement and ambition. The skull is the answer to all of it. There is one more detail. In the upper left corner, half hidden behind the green curtain, is a small silver crucifix. Easy to miss. Holbein put it there deliberately. The skull dominates the foreground. The cross is barely visible in the corner. Make of that what you will. The painting is 207 centimeters tall. The skull, viewed from the correct angle, is life-sized. Self-portrait with thorn necklace and hummingbird. Frida Kahlo painted this in 1940. The year her divorce from Diego Rivera was finalized. She is looking directly at the viewer. She always looks directly at the viewer. Around her neck is a necklace of thorns. They press into her skin. Where they press hardest, at the base of her throat, small drops of blood appear. Not dramatic, just present. The way a paper cut bleeds, quietly, without asking for attention. From the necklace hangs a dead hummingbird. In Mexican folklore, hummingbirds are worn as charms to bring luck in love. This one is dead. Hanging upside down. On her left shoulder sits a black cat watching the hummingbird. On her right shoulder, a black monkey, a pet Rivera had given her, tugs at the thorn necklace, tightening it further. Above her head, 2 dragonflies, 2 butterflies at the center of her hair, and behind everything, dense wall of green leaves that press in from every direction, allowing no depth, no escape, no background. Kahlo had been in a bus accident at 18 that shattered her pelvis, her spine, her collarbone, her right leg. She had 35 surgeries over her lifetime. She painted lying on her back with a mirror mounted above her bed because she couldn't sit up. She said she painted herself because she was the subject she knew most intimately, because she was alone so often. In this painting, she is wearing her pain as jewelry. The thorns are not a metaphor. She is hiding inside symbolism. They are pressing into her throat, and she is not moving. The monkey is pulling them tighter, and she is not moving. She is looking directly at you, completely still, bleeding from the neck, and her expression is not anguish. It is patience. The face of war. Salvador Dali painted this in 1940. Europe was already burning. He was in exile in the United States, watching from a distance. This is what he saw when he closed his eyes. A severed head floats in a desert landscape. The skin is stretched tight. The face is contorted in a silent scream. Mouth open, eyes hollow. Inside each eye socket, another screaming face. Inside those faces, more faces, recursive, infinite, each head containing more heads, all screaming, all dying, all the same. Around the central head, serpents coil, not attacking, just present, waiting. Dali was not a political painter. He was largely indifferent to the ideological battles of his time, which alienated him from nearly every movement he touched. But this painting is not ideological. It doesn't take sides. It doesn't name a country or a leader or a cause. It just shows what war actually is. Not a single death, but a structure. A system in which each death contains more death, in which violence is not an event, but an architecture. The desert behind the head is empty. No soldiers, no flags, no battlefield. Just cracked earth, a brown sky, and a face full of faces, all screaming at once and none of them making a sound. Dali painted it in the same year Germany occupied France. He finished it in California. He titled it The Face of War and never felt the need to explain further. Ivan the Terrible and his son. Ilya Repin painted this in 1885. It took him 3 years. He said it nearly destroyed him. He kept painting over it, walking away from it, coming back. He couldn't stop, and he couldn't finish it. On November 16th, 1581, Tsar Ivan IV struck his son and heir, Ivan Ivanovich, in the head with his iron-tipped staff during an argument. The exact cause of the argument is disputed. Some sources say it was about Ivan's pregnant wife. Others say it was political. What is not disputed is that the blow was fatal. Ivan Ivanovich died 4 days later. In the painting, the Tsar holds his son on the floor, cradling his head. His left hand covers the wound, a gaping hole at the temple, blood running freely down the son's face, soaking into his collar, pooling on the floor. The Tsar's eyes are the center of the painting. They are enormous, blown wide, not with grief, but with the specific horror of someone who has just understood what they have done and cannot undo it. His mouth is open slightly. His body is curled around his son's like he is trying to take back the blow with his own body heat. The son's eyes are half open, already going distant. Repin was accused of defaming the Russian monarchy. The painting was banned. A man walked into the Tretyakov Gallery in 1913 and slashed it 3 times with a knife. The attacker had to be restrained from killing himself afterward. The gallery director resigned. Repin repainted the damaged sections himself, but said afterward that the eyes were never quite the same. The painting was attacked again in 2018. A visitor struck it with a metal pole. The faces of both figures were damaged. It has since been restored. Something about this painting makes people want to destroy it. The sleep of reason produces monsters. Francisco Goya made this in 1799 as part of a series of 80 prints called Los Caprichos. It is the most famous image in the series and one of the most reproduced images in the history of printmaking. A man sits slumped over a desk, asleep, his head buried in his folded arms. Around him, emerging from the darkness behind, owls and bats swarm. They are not attacking. They are gathering, watching, waiting for him to stay asleep. The title is written on the front of the desk. El sueño de la razón produce monstruos. Goya intended a double meaning. Sueño means both sleep and dream. The sleep of reason produces monsters. The dream of reason produces monsters. Both are true. Goya was making an Enlightenment argument. When rational thought is suspended through sleep, through ignorance, through superstition, through willful blindness, the creatures that live in the dark move in. The owls are folly. The bats are ignorance. The lynx at the man's feet, sometimes overlooked, represents the kind of sharp-eyed vigilance that could drive them back if the man would only wake up. But he is not waking up, and the creatures are not leaving. Goya made this 9 years before Napoleon invaded Spain, 11 years before the country collapsed into a guerrilla war that killed hundreds of thousands, 16 years before he moved into the house of the deaf man and began painting his nightmares directly onto the walls. He saw it coming. He drew it. Nobody woke up. Portrait of Dora Maar. Pablo Picasso painted this in 1937. Dora Maar was a photographer, an artist, a surrealist, and Picasso's companion for 9 years. She was also, by most accounts, one of the most intellectually formidable people in his circle. None of that is in this painting. The face is split, not metaphorically, literally divided down the center into two irreconcilable halves. The left side is frontal, the right side is profile. They exist simultaneously, forced together into a single face that cannot exist in nature. The eyes are misaligned. The nose is wrong. The mouth sits at an angle that belongs to neither view. Picasso said he painted people not as they looked, but as he knew them, which means this is how he knew Dora Maar, as a person fractured into incompatible versions, none of them complete, all of them true at once. Maar herself said something different. She said Picasso spent their 9 years together systematically dismantling her, that he was threatened by her talent and methodical about destroying her confidence, that by the time he left her in 1943 for a younger woman, she had stopped making her own work almost entirely. She had a breakdown after he left. She converted to Catholicism. She retreated from the art world. She lived alone in the house Picasso had given her in Minerve for the rest of her life, rarely leaving, rarely speaking to anyone from her former life. When she died in 1997, her apartment in Paris was found to contain a large number of Picasso's works, gifts. She had kept all of them. The paintings he had made of her, showing her face broken into pieces, hung on her walls until the day she died. If you like this video, subscribe for more.